We continue now at the top of Daf Chavtesam and Beis Meseches Megillah. This is Megillah Daf 29b. The Mishnah in Meseches Shkolim also says V'ala Kilayim. You make an announcement on Rosh Chodesh Adar about Kilayim. Rashi over here says V'ala Kilayim La'akor Kili Hazroim Hanikorim Ben Hatu. In other words, you have to announce now it's the time that things are starting to grow. You make an announcement. If anyone sees any Kilayim, any mixtures growing in the ground, make sure to pull out those plants so you don't violate the Yisr of Kilayim. Gemara says, Bishlam ala kilayim. I understand why on Rosh Chodesh Adar you announce about kilayim. Dizman zriyahi, that's the time of planting. That's when things are growing. And therefore, things are growing at this time. You have to make this announcement. El ala shkolim inolan. But from where do we know that you announce on Rosh Chodesh Adar? You tell people that they have to start giving the machatzes hashekel. Amar Rabbi Tavi, Amar Rabbi Yoshia. So Rabbi Tavi says in the name of Rabbi Yoshia. The Amar Kra, because the pasuk says Zos Olas Chodesh Bechodsho. It says this is the carbon ola of the month. Amar Torah. What the Torah here is saying is as follows: Chodesh v'havei carbon mitruva chadasha. When this month comes, it's talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the new month. So then you have to start bringing the public karbanos from the new machatzes hashekel, from the new public money. As Rashi over here says, Elo Amar Torah. The Torah says, Yesh lecha chodesh hatatzarech lechadsho b'havas olos tzmidin u'musafin mitruma chadasha. There is a month. The reason why it says the word chodesh so many different times in this pasuk is to say there's a month where you have to bring from the truma chadasha. V'zehu Nisan, it refers to the month of Nisan. Kedamrinan b'Rosh Hashanah, degamrinan shana shana minisan, dechsiv rishon hu lachem l'chad she'ashana. So we're talking here that on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you have to start bringing the public karbanos from the new money, from the truma chadasha. Now, since in Nisan you have to bring from the Truma Chadasha, so Karminan v'Karinan be'echad ba'adar. So we earlier, a month earlier on Rosh Chodesh Adar, we announce and we say you got to bring in your machatzes hashekel. So you give people a month to bring in the machatzes hashekel before Nisan. This way they'll bring their shkolim, their machatzes hashekel, to the Beis Hamikdash. Gemara says, "Keman, who does this follow?" Delok Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. It doesn't seem like it follows Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. That you have to go a month earlier. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel never says you need such a long preparation time. The Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, because if you follow Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, he says in general when we prepare for a yontiv, you only need 2 weeks. The Tanya is we learned in a brayso sholin bilchas haPesach kodem lePesach shloshim yom. Tanakama says we start learning the halachas of Pesach before Pesach, 30 days before Pesach. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says shtei Shabbos, you just need 2 weeks. So the same thing over here, you should only have to do it about halfway through Adar, about the 15th of Adar. You shouldn't have to start announcing it a month before on Rosh Chodesh Adar. So the Gemara answers, Afilo Tema Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. No, you could even say that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel would agree that when it comes to the Shkolim, you should announce it a month before. You should announce it on Rosh Chodesh Adar. Kevan do Amar Mar, because since the Master said, B'chamisha Asar Boshel Chonos Yoshvin b'Medina, that already on the 15th of Adar, you have the money changers sitting throughout the country. Uv'chaf Hey Yoshvin b'Mikdash, and on the 25th of Adar, they're sitting in the Beis HaMikdash. So already on the 15th, you have the money changers. So Mishum Shel Chonos Kadminan v'Karinan. So 2 weeks earlier than that, meaning on Rosh Chodesh Adar, that's when we make the announcement. The Gemara asks, my Parsha Shkolim, what exactly is the Parsha Shkolim? Meaning, what section from the Torah do we read on Parsha Shkolim? Rav Amarav says, Savis ben Yisrael v'yamarta aleim as karbani lachmi. So Rav says it's the same reading we read on Rosh Chodesh. It's the reading that has to do with the karbanos, the carbon that we bring every day, the carbon tomid. U'Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says Kisisa. It's the Parsha of Kisisa. The Parsha of Kisisa mentions the collection of the Shkolim for the building of the Mishkan. So the Gemara says, if you say it's Kisisa, that's why it's called Parsha Shkolim. It actually has the word Shkolim in there. But according to the one who says it's the Parsha of Karbani Lachmi, is anything written about Shkolim over here? So the Gemara says, no, in time of Ma'ikid Rabbi Tavi. No, it is really about Shkolim, because what is Shkolim all about? It's about the public karbanos, like Rabbi Tavi just said earlier. And that's exactly what's happening in Karbani Lachmi. That parsha is talking about the public karbanos. And the Gemara says, B'shlam v'laman d'amar tzavis b'nei Yisrael. I understand that if it's the parsha that we read on Rosh Chodesh, Mishum d'chsivi karbanos hasam k'Rabbi Tavi. Again, karbanos are written over there, just like Rabbi Tavi says. El-laman d'amar kisisa, but the one who says that we read from kisisa, and that's Shkolim. So karbanos miksivi, does it say anything about karbanos over here? Shkolim la'adonim ksivi. The reason the shkolim were collected in the Parshas Kisisa was really for the adonim. That was the base where they put the beams of the Mishkan in. So they had these this adonim. They were made out of silver. They were made from the shkolim. Has nothing to do with the public karbanos. So to that the Gemara answers, no, Keratoni Rav Yosef. It's like Rav Yosef taught, Shalosh Trumos Hein. There were actually 3 different collections. The Shkolim we're talking about here are referring to collecting for 3 different things. Shal Mizbeach, LeMizbeach. First of all, they did do a collection for the Mizbeach, meaning for the Karbanos, the public Karbanos that were brought on the Mizbeach. V'shel adonim la'adonim, they also collected for the adonim, like we just said. V'shel bedek habayis le'bedek habayis, and they also collected shkolim for bedek habayis, for general repair of the Mishkan. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam l'man domer kisisa. I understand if you say that the parsha shkolim is kisisa. So hainu deshani hay rosh chodesh mishar rosh chodashim. So therefore, let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos, it's still going to be a different laning than other Rosh Chodesh. Another Rosh Chodesh you read from Tzaves Karbani Lachmi, and when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos, so again the parsha shkolim is kisisa. Elamadam or Tzaves Karbani, but according to the one who says you're reading the parsha of Tzaves Karbani, my shani. So what's the difference again? What's the difference over here? When Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos, it's Rosh Chodesh anyway. So you read from this parsha anyway because of Rosh Chodesh. So what's the difference that it's parsha shkolim is the same parsha as Rosh Chodesh? So the Gemara answers, Shani, no, it is different. Ilu Rosh Chodashim, because on a regular Rosh Chodesh, Karu Shisa Binyana Diyoma. So let's say Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, you would read 6 in the parsha of the week. V'chad b'de Rosh Chodesh, and then one aliyah would be the aliyah of Rosh Chodesh. V'ilu ha'idna, but now when we're talking about Rosh Chodesh Adar, when we're talking about the parsha shkolim, so kulu b'de Rosh Chodesh. Actually, everybody, all 7 aliyahs come from this parsha of Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara says, that only works according to the one who says that when they would read the 4 parshios, these Arba parshios, you wouldn't read Parshas HaShavua. And we return to Parshas HaShavua on the 5th week, so to speak, after the Arba parshios are done. So that makes sense. That's what you just said over here, that on Parshas Shkolim, you're going to read all 7 aliyahs are going to come from Rosh Chodesh. But there's another mandava that says no. When we have the Arba Parshios, the Dalet Parshios, we still read from the Parsha Shavua. What we're actually returning to is the Haftorah. In other words, on those weeks you had a special Haftorah, and then we return to the regular Haftorahs that are connected with the Parsha Shavua. Or Parsha Diyoma Karina, we always read the Parsha Shavua. So then it's exactly the same. Whether it's a regular Rosh Chodesh that falls on Shabbos or whether it's Rosh Chodesh Adar, you're always going to be reading from the Parsha Shavua and also reading from the section of Rosh Chodesh. So again, my Shani, what's the difference between Rosh Chodesh Adar and any other Rosh Chodesh that falls out on Shabbos? And so the Gemara answers, no, Shani, it is different. Because on a regular Rosh Chodesh, you read 6 again from the Parsha Shavua, and then you read 1 aliyah from Rosh Chodesh. But when it comes to this situation of Rosh Chodesh Adar, you're actually reading 3 from the Parsha Shavua, 3 aliyahs. And you're reading 4 aliyahs are going to be read from Rosh Chodesh. They're going to be read again from this Parsha, the Parsha Shkolim. And the Gemara continues, Mesa, we have the following question. Again, this is going on the Machlokas, whether or not Parsha Shkolim is Kisisa, or is it Tzaves Karbani Lachmi. It says over here, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shecholios B'Shabbos. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos. Korin beParsha Shkolim. You read Parsha Shkolim. Umaftirin b'Yehoyada HaKohen. And the Haftorah is from the section of Yehoyada HaKohen. So the Gemara says, B'Shlama Lamando Amar Kisisa. I understand if you say that what we're reading is Kisisa. Hainu demaftir b'Yehoyada HaKohen. That makes sense that you're going to read from the section of Haftorah of Yehoyada HaKohen. The Domi Le Dechsiv Kesef Nafshos Erko. It says over there, this is in Malachim Beis, it says Ish Kesef Nafshos Erko Kol Kesef, etc. So it mentions the same basic language as we find in Kisisa. Elamand Omer as Karbani Lachmi Midami. But according to the one who says you're reading about Karbanos, there's nothing in this section over here in Sefer Malachim that's similar at all to Karbanos. So the Gemara says, no, it is similar. Dami, it is similar. Kid Reb Tavi. Like we said, Rabbi Tavi makes that connection because there's a connection between Shkolim in general and the bringing of Karbanos. Mesa, we have the following question. Cholios beParsha Smuchala. It said, let's say the Parsha Shkolim falls out right next to the week right next to it is the same laning. So when it's Kisisa, it's very obvious. In other words, Kisisa falls out the week right next to the Parsha Shkolim, which is the same laning. Bein milfaneh, bein milachara, whether Kisisa falls out earlier or later, whether it's the week before or the week after. Koronosavik, so you're going to end up reading it twice. You read Parshas Kisisa when it's the Parsha Shavua, and then by Parsha Shkolim, you read Parshas Kisisa again. So that's what the Gemara says. I understand if it's Kisisa, that makes sense that Kisisa could fall out around the same time. That's about that Parsha. Kisisa can fall out around the time of Parsha Shkolim. But according to the one who says it's the Parsha of Tzaves Karbani, that's not nearly the time when we lane that Parsha. That comes out a totally different time of the year. So the Gemara says, well, it depends what your cycle of the laning is. In yes, Levnei Ma'arava, for the people of the West, meaning the people of Eretz Yisrael, the Maski L'Doraisa B'Tloshinin, they didn't lane like we lane. The way we lane is we go through the entire Torah in 1 year. So it's never going to come out, that as Karbani Lachmi is never going to come out around this time of Adar. But in the B'nai Eretz Yisrael, B'nai Ma'arava, they used to go through the Torah over a cycle of 3 years. They would go through the entire Chamisha Chumshei Torah in laning. They divide it up over 3 years, so then it could come out. Any parsha is really able to come out at any time because you're going in a 3-year cycle. It's a completely different cycle. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Kavase de Shmuel, we have a brisa that supports Shmuel. Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechol Lios B'Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos, Koren Kitisa, again you read from Parshas Kisisa, that's the Parsha Shkolim, Umaftirin Yehoyada HaKohen, and then you do the Haftorah from the section we mentioned above, Yehoyada HaKohen. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechol Lios B'Shabbos, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Shabbos, Motziin Shalosh Torahs, you take out 3 Sifrei Torah, V'koren bohen echod binyano shel yom, and you read in them, one of them you read from the Parsha of Shavua, V'echod b'shel Rosh Chodesh, one of them you read from the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh, V'echod b'chisisa, and then one of them you read from Kisisa, again, that's the Parsha Shkolim. V'yamar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, and Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says, Rosh Chodesh Teves shechol lios b'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh Teves falls out on Shabbos, that's of course right in the middle of Chanukah. Mevi'in Shalosh Torahs, you take 3 Sifrei Torah, V'koren behen, you read from them, Echod binyano shel yom, one is the Parsha of Shavua, V'echod b'Rosh Chodesh, one you read Rosh Chodesh, V'echod b'Chanukah. And then one from one Sefer Torah you read from the Kriya of Chanukah. Utzrich, and you need both statements of Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha. Diet mar b'ha kam Rabbi Yitzchak, aval b'hach kerav svirolei. Diamar Parsha Shkolim as karbani lachmi. If Rabbi Yitzchak only made his statement on Chanukah, so then I might think that he holds like Rav, that when it comes to Parsha Shkolim, it's really karbani lachmi. You're reading the same thing that you read any Rosh Chodesh. Ovishtes Torah sagi. So with 2 Sifrei Torah, it would be enough. So kamash malan. That's why he has to make the statement. He wants to tell you that the Parsha Shkolim is really kisisa. So the Gemara says, V'lei moha v'lo boyhach. Well, if that's the case, you might as well say the Chiddush about Parsha Shkolim, and you don't need the Chanukah one. And so the Gemara says, no, that you're right about Chodem Michlal Chaver to Itmar. One statement really includes the other statement. And the idea over there is that really his original statement was said by Parsha Shkolim, by Kisisa, and we infer from that a similar halacha by Chanukah. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have the following Machlokas Amoraim, Rosh Chodesh Teves Shechol Lios B'chol, when Rosh Chodesh Teves falls out in the middle of the week. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Karu Talosa B'Rosh Chodesh, so you should call up 3 people, 3 aliyos for Rosh Chodesh, V'chad b'Chanukah, and 1 aliyah should read from Chanukah. Rav Dimi de min Chaifa Amar, and Rav Dimi from Chaifa says, Karu Talosa b'Chanukah, no, 3 should read from Chanukah, V'chad b'de Rosh Chodesh, and then 1 should be called up to read Rosh Chodesh. Amar Rabbi Moni says, Kivasei de Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha mistabra. It makes sense like what Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha is saying, that 3 from Rosh Chodesh and 1 from Chanukah. Why? The Tadr v'sheino Tadr kodem, because if you have something that's frequent and something that's not as frequent, so the one that's frequent should come first. So in this case, Rosh Chodesh should have precedence over Chanukah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Avin says, Kivasi de Rav Dimi mistaber. It actually makes more sense like Rav Dimi, that the 1 aliyah should be Rosh Chodesh, the last aliyah should be Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because mi garam l'Ravi sheyava, who even caused that there are 4 aliyahs? On Chanukah you usually only have 3 aliyahs. Why do you have 4 aliyahs? Rosh Chodesh. It's Rosh Chodesh that causes the 4th aliyah. Hilkach Ravi b'Rosh Chodesh by Mikri. Therefore, the 4th aliyah should be the aliyah of Rosh Chodesh. And the Gemara says, "My havi Allah." So, what is the conclusion? Rav Yosef Amar. Rav Yosef says, "Ein mashkichin b'Rosh Chodesh." We pay no attention to Rosh Chodesh. Rabba Amar, "Ein mashkichin b'Chanukah." And Rabba says, we pay no attention to Chanukah. V'hilchasa ein mashkichin b'Chanukah. The halacha is we pay no attention to Chanukah. V'Rosh Chodesh ikar, and Rosh Chodesh is the main one. And Rashi over here explains, Ein mashkichin la sos ikar. Ein mashkichin means to say that we don't make that the ikar one. So let's say in terms of the final halacha, the halacha is Ein mashkichin b'Chanukah and Rosh Chodesh is ikar, means that you're going to have 3 aliyahs from Rosh Chodesh and just 1 aliyah from Chanukah. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was taught, Chol liyos b'viatot tetzaveh. Let's say Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out on Parshas Tetzaveh. Now Parshas Tetzaveh is right before Parshas Kisisa. So the very next week is Kisisa, but now it's Parsha Shkolim, and you're going to be learning from Kisisa this week. So what do? So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says, Karu Shisa miviatot tetzaveh ad Kisisa. You read 6 aliyahs, meaning the entire Parsha of Tetzaveh you read until Kisisa, and divide it among 6 aliyahs. V'chad michitisa ad v'yasisa. And then your 7th aliyah will be from the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, what we call Parsha Shkolim. Amar Abaya, so Abaya said to that, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph.